Go ahead and get started for tonight's meeting. It is now 6:01 on Monday, July 7th. We have all counselors with the exception of James Steele and Linda Caprera, and we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. And at this time, I will open it up for any public comment. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to come to the podium or anyone online. Not hearing anything from the audience or seeing anything online, we will move into item 96, consideration of the transient seller permit application Yes. Yes. And what's your name?
My name is Sherry Doyen for the record, and I just wanted to let the council know and the town manager that I had a client come in today and they were talking about the Winthrop Public Beach over the 4th of July. There was a bunch of kids there and they had somebody on a jet ski that came right up to where the ropes are, had his 10-year-old son emptying gas into it to fill it up, and the gas spilled and got the area contaminated. My coworker was there. He witnessed it. He spoke to the gentleman. He's also a Winthrop resident. I just wanted you to be aware of that. I said, I'm going to be at a council meeting tonight. I'm going to let them know that he was upset because it contaminated the whole swimming area where the children were over the 4th on the beach. For the record, he told me I could give you his name, Ed Booker. He witnessed it. He spoke to the gentleman, and the gentleman didn't say anything, just whatever. I just wanted you to be aware of that.
Thank you, Sherry. We will continue with item 96, consideration of the transient seller permit application from Of Main Origin LLC. Hello. Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Hey there, my name's Whitney Butler. I'm the owner and operator of Main Origin Food Truck, and we're seeking a permit to be able to participate in Winthrop Heritage Days specifically this year. We got the month permit last year, so we can only get that once. And we do a lot of locally sourced ingredients, and I make everything from scratch, and we're looking forward to being able to work with everybody and help out in the community and collab with people. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Well, welcome, Whitney. Thank you.
Thank
and
you.
When you say transient, do you have any particular locations in mind?
We're wanting to participate in Winthrop Heritage Days, so wherever they stick us there. I think I heard Main Street, but
Okay.
and last year we were at the Augusta West Campground, so we might go back there a couple times this year. Yep. Any other questions?
All in favor? All are in favor. Thank you very much, Whitney.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
All right, and with that, we will move into item 97, discussion of Winthrop Heritage Day. And I believe we have members here from Winthrop Heritage Day. Thank you.
Thanks. So I'm Sherry Doyen from a co-chairman for Winthrop Heritage Days. I'm going to talk about the legal business part of it, and then Jen's going to, hopefully you got your programs. I emailed Anthony the quote for the insurance. He was supposed to send me an invoice. It's going to cost $515 for the certificate of insurance, which will list Winthrop Grange as the insurer, and the additional insureds will be Town of Winthrop and Winthrop Heritage Day Committee. It will be a $1 million, $2 million policy, and it will be for the day. I've also asked Angela at the Bounce House to provide me with a certificate. She was gone over the holiday. By Friday, I will have those invoices and firm certificates in your hands. Angela was preparing hers today, and again, that Bounce House will have a separate certificate with Town of Winthrop, Winthrop Grange, and Winthrop Heritage Days as the additional insureds, and she takes care of that. So did you have any other questions on certificates of insurance at all?
No questions.
Okay, and then we're just going to kind of go over, we've got a lot of things going on this year, a lot more than last year. Jen's going to talk to you about it, and we'd like you to invite all your friends and family to this event. We're hoping for a big turnout.
Hello, everyone. So I provided to Anthony the kind of like a timeline overview. This is a working document that's being updated regularly. I don't have to read everything off to you, but I can tell you about some changes that have happened since then. Winthrop Police Department was going to be talking about bike safety, and the Bicycle Coalition of Maine is planning to come and also assist them with that process, so that's great. The Bailey Ukuleles is listed as pending, and they're confirmed now, so they'll be opening up the event. The Winthrop Historical Society is going to do a bike parade, like decoration and parade event, as I had kind of listed on there, and we're firming up the times on when that would be. It was suggested to us that we have a parade from the YMCA Recreation Office to the event, but we think that that's a little too hands-on. But maybe that's something we can look at for the future. And Trucking Good Food is listed as pending because their motor blew last week and they're waiting for their new motor to come. And without that, they cannot operate their vehicle. But one of the good things that happened is I had applied for Darlene's Ice Cream for a Cause truck to come to the event, and they have hundreds of requests every season, and they picked our event for that. So basically, if you've never seen it, they have more traditional style good humor bars, things like that. And you can walk up and you give the amount that you choose. And so every not-for-profit vendor that will be participating in the event, the money will be split amongst all of them. So basically, it's a way to give back to the people that are giving back to us and taking care of our town and everything else. I also handed out flyers. I've got a big flyer and a little flyer so that you can share it with someone who might not know, or put it on your refrigerator so you don't forget for yourselves. And there's also a sponsorship form there, or sponsorship letter. So if you know of any businesses that would like to donate a raffle prize or would like to donate some money to help make this event even more successful, we would appreciate it. Anybody who donates $250 or more will get a sign just like the one that's right there. And this is the one that I brought down for the town. So when I leave tonight, I'll be putting it outside the door unless you want me to put it someplace different. Anybody have any questions? Well, I hope you all come.
Thank you very much. We look forward to it. Saturday, July 26th from 10 to 5 down at Norcross Point. Excellent. And if anybody does have any interest in donating or anything, who do they reach out to? Thank you very much. Moving on to item 98, discussion of potential community action grant projects. And we do have a list in this memo provided by our town manager that highlights some of the different opportunities that we have that align with our comprehensive plan. Those include EV chargers, energy audit, contaminated sites for clean energy projects, assessing the suitability of those, and also developing a plan that meets open space. I do believe we have some representatives here from the Conservation Commission. We did also receive this memorandum of support from the Winthrop Conservation Commission supporting an open space plan. So, discussion.
I'd like to learn about this open space plan. We were supposed to have somebody here to talk to us tonight.
Yeah, we've got a couple members of the Conservation Commission right here in the front row.
Do I have a time limit?
Please go ahead.
Okay, a little bit more than 2, maybe. Good evening, councilors. My name is Corinne Michaud LeBlanc, and I'm speaking tonight as a member of the Conservation Commission. I'm also a member of the Kennebec Land Trust Board and a senior resource biologist with the Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. I'm offering comments in support of a community action grant application to fund open space planning in Winthrop. The Conservation Commission supports the development of an open space plan and believes that funding will help to facilitate the process and lead to a community-supported vision for open space in Winthrop. Based on estimates from consultants and towns that have conducted open space planning recently, we expect the cost to be around $50,000, which is within the limits of the grant, and that would include an inventory of open space, mapping, public engagement, and the creation of a final product. I think everybody got the Conservation Commission's memo in advance of today's meeting, so I'm just going to hit on some of the high points from that and also some of the elements of open space planning and what a plan could do for Winthrop. Open space planning has been discussed in town for over 15 years, and development of an open space plan would address at least 4 strategies from the 2024 comprehensive plan. Key components of open space planning include defining and inventorying existing open spaces such as parks, trails, ball fields, and important scenic or natural areas. Community engagement to get input on current and desired uses of open spaces, accessibility of open spaces, and priorities for creating a connected network of green spaces like forests and parks, and blue spaces like water access related resources. The final element of a plan would include identification of priority areas and strategies for management, enhancement, or connection of key areas. Open space planning is non-regulatory in nature and does not result in any changes to zoning, tax status, or individual property rights. There's also actually no involvement at the state level as far as required contents or submitting the plan for review. Open space planning is a community-driven process to develop a roadmap of how to maintain and enhance recreational, scenic, and natural assets for residents. And a quick kind of closing story. I listened to the last council meeting, and actually it was clear to me through that discussion that there is a lot of momentum in town for connecting and enhancing our open spaces, and that long-time conversations about how to connect downtown to the lakefront and expand the trails and connectivity between Mount Pisgah and the Roger Garrett Community Trail are like seeds that have been planted over the years that could be collected and solidified in the open space plan. And information from the plan could then be used for other opportunities like applying for a grant with the new Trails Bond program. The Conservation Commission hopes that the council will endorse open space planning as the subject of our next community grant application. Thank you all for your time, and I'd be happy to try and answer any questions.
Would this open space plan identify like wetland data and like all the stuff that might like prohibit like a permitting process of like, I guess at my job, when we want to do construction and like add on to the existing areas, we have to make sure that like we've identified no environmental impacts. Would they give us that? Like we're spending the money to get that back out of it?
If that was a priority that the town defined, that could be included. Wetlands are actually already mapped at like a national level, so not super fine scale. But if that was a priority type of natural area that the town wanted mapping on, I believe that could be included.
Okay, yeah, because I guess there's like vernal pools and stuff like that. So, and I know each of them, I don't know the intricacies of each, but you know, I could see that being a benefit because I've seen projects, they spend a lot of money up front and then you hit a stone wall of wetland you can't, you know, do anything with, so.
Another potential type of mapping or information could be areas that are flood prone. So not the same thing as regulatory flood maps, but it's related to identifying areas that might be better used as, you know, they're essentially undevelopable, and flooding resilience is another key category of the community action grant, so it could kind of tie those things together as well and get input on areas in town that are prone to flooding.
Yeah, so like the consulting firm, we could request, hey, can you look at this, like 100-year flood or something like that? Okay, yeah, perfect. Thank you.
When you're considering, or we're considering the improvements or putting this money towards something for open space, are we considering is it the open space you currently have, or is it adding to the open space?
First, the first part, and then the second part, as much as the town wants to get into that. So the first element would be inventorying, well, let's back up. The first element would be creating a town definition of open space. So do we want that to include cemeteries, ball fields, farmland, or just like the actual parks and trail system? So that part is crafted and developed by the town. Then you would inventory what we already have. A lot of plans also look at the kind of highest and best use of those properties that are already owned, and that brings in that community engagement piece. So things like, we want more benches in this park that we already have, or a walking path between these two like neighborhoods to get to that park. Those would all be getting towards the second piece about like, how do we add or enhance to the inventory that we did.
So you did mention like ball fields. So, we have a number of different ball fields in this town, and, having kids have grown up in this town, there's always a need for space for them to continue to direct sports and stuff. Is that something that would grow, or we would put towards that? I mean, I know that down at Maxwell Field, we've been struggling with the drainage issue down there for quite some time. They wound up putting something in the infield, and then we get a nice good heavy rain, and all that work and goes right out and down over the hill. So would that be something we consider on putting the money towards that open space?
It sounds like yes to me. So yeah, that could be a priority community area that needs some enhancement to better serve the community. The money from the grant would be towards that mapping and inventorying and like public meetings, but then the plan could identify, this is a highly used public park that always floods, identify some future funding sources to go towards a fix for that, or identify what would need to be done to make that more usable.
Is that something we would vote on, Anthony? What we choose what the plan would be as a percent after it's been presented to us?
Well, I think as Corinne said, if there were particular interests that we could have the plan address and focus on. I mean, one of the things that I pointed out in the background memo is, in like 4 or 5 different places in the comprehensive plan, we talk about trails, either multi-use or single-use trails, motorized versus non-motorized, and then connector trails between different spaces. And so I think, as Corinne has explained, what this plan would do is it would be sort of like our comprehensive plan when it comes to open spaces. As she said, it's not regulatory in nature, but it sort of gives us a map of what we want open spaces to be and look like and be used for in our community. And so that as councils now and in the future making decisions, then they can.
Really just was trying to make sure. I'm all for some open space. I'm open for have some open space. My fear is I don't want us to continue to buy more space that's available and create more space because we need less development in town. Because I would like to have us develop in town. There's a yin and yang to this whole thing, and I would like to see us have more development to bring more families into town and have that grow that way as well. So when I ask the question is, would we be purchasing more property that's available to create more open space? Is kind of what I was saying. I wouldn't want to use that money towards that. I would want to use it to improve the open space that we currently have.
And perfectly understandable, Jim. I mean, Corinne and I were part of a discussion last week with the Kennebec Land Trust about because there's also some other state grants that would allow connections between the Garrett Trail and Mount Pisgah, for instance.
Yeah.
And so how could we make that happen?
Right.
When we talked about open space planning, I said, realistically, it would probably be a stretch for the town to invest monies into purchasing properties when there's so many other competing needs, whether paving roads or buying fire trucks or whatever the case might be. So, but there might be other players in the community who might, like Kennebec Land Trust, who might be interested in acquiring pieces of property identified in the plan.
Okay.
I think you could actually incorporate what you're saying into this by saying, we do want to prioritize a certain area that may be more developable, friendly for development, and then this area over here being open, and how you could tie the two together. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's a great example of how it complements other things like the growth areas in town and areas that aren't appropriate for growth areas. If I could, I'll just maybe give a few examples from the Bridge Stick
Please.
plan. I think it's a really nice example, which we have a link to somewhere. But they did things in their plan where they looked at all of the currently town-owned parcels and identified some that weren't really being used for anything. So it was already town-owned property, and then got input from the community, like maybe this could be a skate park or a dog park, and it's something that's already sort of an asset, but an underused asset. And then that discussion about, how could you walk from here to there, and identifying some of those connectors. So it seems like a relevant example for Winthrop, some of the discussions that they had there.
Clarification. Thank you.
Andy?
Well, thank you. If you kind of had an idea where I grew up, you'd know that I'm in favor of open space. But I have a concern that if we declare specific open places, we may run afoul of property owners that had plans to develop their property. And we would be taking property rights. If a person bought 50 acres planning on developing it, and then we declared it open space, we're going to have a problem.
I completely understand that concern. I think the best comparison I can make to that, so just to reiterate, the plan itself has no zoning implications or land use on your property implications. And again, to kind of pair it with thinking about growth areas, when the town designated the growth areas in the comprehensive plan, that in the same way didn't allow those landowners to do anything more or less on their property. It just identified an area in town that was considered appropriate for a certain kind of growth. So the open space plan would be identifying some areas that were either already open space and protected, or maybe like in the discussion a couple weeks ago, there important potential paths between downtown and the lake. Like maybe we get some maps that talk about where those potential corridors could be, but they don't take any further steps to changing anything on the ground. It's more or less capturing all those community discussions and finding ways to piece that together in the future, however that might come about.
Well, I just want to touch on, and Anthony's used this, you've used it. Regulatory in nature. We had it's a plan. This phrase, it's not regulatory in nature, came up many times. As I remember it, and maybe you guys can kind of hone in, there was a discussion about the comprehensive plan being a roadmap to us, how we're going to look at zoning and ordinances in the future, and what we might want to change when it comes to that, based on the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan does not directly do it. However, it is a driver towards revisiting the zoning and zoning ordinance and other pieces of the town, say the regulatory bodies. It is going to relook at, the planning board was going to revisit the zoning and one other piece of the regulatory road for the town. But even though this isn't regulatory in nature, it's advice or driving toward changes that we may make. Is that how, that's the discussion we'd had. This directly is not regulatory in nature. However, it's pushing toward changes that we may make in the future.
I agree, Roy, except that it's not a driver, okay? It's not the rule, it's not the law, it's a guide. I think that's a more appropriate word to use.
I just want to make sure that we're not.
I get your point. I
Using
agree with
this
you.
to make changes that are going to affect, like what you said, of people, we're not using this as a driver to make changes to affect what people's plans are with their property, their value of their property, the use of their property. That is my biggest concern, is we're not using this open space plan or even the comprehensive plan to change stuff that affects people's property, their value. They purchase the property, they pay taxes on the property. They should not have stuff like this driving changes to what they can do with their property. And I just want to be assured that that is not going to happen.
Aaron?
Agree, Bruce.
Thank you, by the way, for all the information. I just wanted to kind of in general comment and then point if you need to. I think I'm in favor prioritizing the application towards this open space planning, only because a lot of it, we've talked about it, we've given them the coming with
Do resilience project grant that we would be applying for. So far, we've already applied for and been approved for the heat pumps in the fire station and municipal facilities to LED lighting. And we've also conducted a community engagement session a couple months ago down at the library, inviting residents and community members to come down and attend and to contribute to the the community action grant strategies and the different requirements of what needs to be met. And at that session, of what was listed, I think open space had the most votes, and I've heard open space plan multiple times. And so I think that I've heard a lot of support, not only from the Conservation Commission, but also from the Planning Board and from residents in the community for an open space. And what I think the concern is with the comprehensive plan and the changing, I think, of the zoning was more so about maybe rural or wet properties like shoreland zones, or not shoreland, but was the
Resource protection?
yes, resource protected areas. But also with that, I think in order to have any kind of change moving forward, you do have to have a starting point. And so I think that this would be that starting point. So I think that it's important to have something like that, and it would help shape the comprehensive plan. And since we are now with a comprehensive plan implementation committee, it's their goal to ensure that the Conservation Commission is not butting heads with affordable housing and making sure that everybody is kind of working cohesively to make sure that we are not, doing that. So again, I would have to support this from the support that I've heard over the time that I've been on the council and from the community. So you had something, James?
Yes, I did. Thank you, by the way, for coming up and
Should
presenting
I
that.
sit down yet?
You can sit down now. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because what I have to say, I won't be asking you any questions, so thank you. I am kind of looking this over, and this is our third one, to your point. In discussing it, I did like like I said in the last meeting, the trail from Roger Garrett Trail System to go to Pisgah. I think that's kind of a neat project. I would like to put some money towards it, but I also look at this other one, which I think you presented, something to do with the ambulance garage for energy efficiency, which we're in desperate need of doing something down there as well. And if we don't use that money for this, I mean, that's going to come from the taxpayers. So I really support that. And I don't know if we could divvy this money up to say, we're going to give 10 here, 20 here, or to this at 75,000. But I also look at, when we look at our choices, what we can do, I look at A8, it says adopt a complete streets policy which addresses safety for bike, pedestrian uses and transit. So, I mean, that almost falls into line with a lot of things that we like to talk about, but you know, our downtown having something that's a decent pedestrian way, in, you know, bike path maybe, or something to do with the sidewalks. I don't know if that could slide in here because we know we need some sidewalks maintenance drastically. But I look at that and, you know, I wouldn't want to put all my eggs in one basket. I'd like to get some quotes, see what we can do, and maybe spread out the $75,000 to tackle a couple tasks that we have here. But I know the biggest one that I really see is when, as you wrote in your little memo, is I look at that, the ambulance garage and you know, having a couple pipes that burst because it wasn't done properly to be efficient, energy efficient. And now having the heat pumps in there, we're really not capitalizing on the value of those heat pumps to heat and cool that building properly if it's not done or energy efficient as far as insulated and evaluated. So those are my thoughts. And that's kind of what I begin. Again, I'm not shooting down this open space contest. I like it. I just think there's some other priorities right now that we also needed to put some money towards.
So Mike Ketchens has given me a couple of contacts of energy auditors, Jim. And the deadline to apply for this grant is August the 29th. So we've got a little bit of time. And so I'd be happy to look at, you know, just to confirm the cost that the Conservation Commission has quoted for an open space plan. If it is in fact $50,000, I think we could feel somewhat confident that we could get an energy audit for $25,000 or less. Particularly if we focus on the buildings that we know are probably most in need of that, which would be the ambulance station, the police station. Fire department should be pretty good, but you know, depending upon the cost, we might want to put that one in there as well.
Or yeah, even maybe
Or the library.
Or maybe want to look at what's going on down at the rec building.
Yeah, so
Traditionally, it gets ignored and it gets pretty good use and beat up for the kids because
yeah,
that happens.
yeah, and that's true. I mean, you saw in the memo that we had an opportunity to jump on an energy efficiency main opportunity to reduce the cost of heat pumps in that building to $5,000, which was I think like 1/5 of what the initial cost was going to be. But yeah, that might be a good one too, just to make sure that we're
Just as long as we're trying to get our biggest bang for the buck, as we've always sat here on the councils like we did and kind of for the heat pumps and the lighting, you know, we kind of went on our own instead of co-partnering with the other towns. But we definitely have some priorities things on our list of things that we need to tackle.
Anything else? All right, so you said August 29th is the deadline?
Yeah, what I'm going to try to do is do a little research over the next 2 weeks and just report back to you guys at your next meeting.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you for coming in and presenting.
Appreciate it.
All right, this time we'll move on to item 99, discussion and consideration of appointees to the Charter Commission. Is there a suggested motion?
I move to appoint Aaron White for the commission.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Now with that, we also received council appointments. And we have from the Winthrop voters on June 17th, voted on members of the Conservation Commission. So they elected Matthew Colpitts with 293 votes, and then there were 5 write-in candidates. Yes, thank you. Excuse me, Charter Commission. A lot of different committees and comprehensive plans, and things like that. Charter Commission is what we are at right now. So as far as the
We'll get you on another committee, Bruce.
Commission, Matthew Colpitts was elected in with 293 votes. And then in addition, there were 5 write-in candidates receiving the highest vote totals, including Carrie Ann Wilkins with 17 votes. who is in attendance tonight. Richard Garrett for 14 votes. Bruce Burns with 19 votes, also in attendance tonight. Mike Zato with 6 votes, also in attendance tonight, thank you. And Andy West, one of our members of the council, with 6 votes. All of the members have agreed to serve. And so this comprises 6 elected members of the 9-member commission. And now with Councilor White as well, we have 2 more positions. And so I'll turn it over to the council if there's anything we'd like to discuss as far as members. I have reviewed the applications. I know that there's some different ones. Have any insight?
Yeah, I was gonna go through, I guess we're narrowing it down to, as far as the process, I'm good with Juice, Smith.
So Mr. Smith has applied to serve on the comp plan committee. So among your applications, you have 5 for the Charter Commission, and then you have 2 for the comp plan committee, and those are Mr. Smith and Mr. Adams.
To be honest with you, they were all in a pile, and if I hadn't have talked to you the other day, I'd have done the same thing Aaron did.
Yep, it's okay.
I'll just read off the applications that I do have here. And it's Betty Harris Howard, Gil Susi, Pauline Souza, James Laflamme, Jana Dulog. And those are all,
In order, or?
What do we think?
Just for the record, I fail to understand how the town attorney decided that we got to do this whole thing and it didn't go through the appointments committee.
That was not a decision by the town attorney. I spoke with the chair and the chair of the appointments committee, and so this is the process that they prescribed.
You agreed to that?
Well, I think, yeah, we mentioned that this would be something completely different, right?
I think it's a little bit of a different animal than an appointment to a standing committee. I mean, this is an ad hoc committee that's going to serve.
Phil's gonna be at the first meeting.
He'll be at their second meeting after the organizational meeting.
Well, in any case, let's hash our way through this.
Just to have a good understanding of explanation of what's the plan for this committee, and is the commission, thank you, committee. Just kind of understanding what the role is going to be. Is Phil going to be involved? Is he's going to be kind of he's going to oversee what they're writing, make sure it's all lock solid and ready to rock and roll?
So I think the best way to explain it is, first of all, we need to ensure that the charter is in compliance with state law. And of course, the town attorney is going to be a super helpful to that. And it's going to be sort of the leading presenter of information as it relates to that. And then secondly, we want to make sure that the charter also reflects sort of what either current or best practices are, because it hasn't been updated in 18 years. Parts of it read like it did in its original form in 1972. And so we want to ensure that it reflects, what the best practices are today in municipal government.
Beautiful.
And so the Charter Commission, what they're going to be doing is they're going to be reviewing the charter for any necessary changes with the help, I think, primarily of the town's attorney, the town manager, and the town clerk. And then they will be making some recommendations that will then go to the voters as to whether or not those changes should be approved by the voters. Yeah.
Okay, well, that helps, because so it's a lot like what we did with the planning board, and we looked through all the regulations, but we're not voting on it.
Yeah, so it may be sort of akin to the process with the mooring committee, where, they'll come up with their recommendations. You guys will be just among the electorate that will vote on it, but as far as the council approving or disapproving the recommendations from the Charter Commission, they alone are responsible for coming up with those recommendations for the voters. And the other thing, Jim, I failed to mention the first time, is that anything that they come up with has to be certified by a attorney that's part of the Maine State Bar, which of course the town's attorney is. So he will do sort of a final review of it just to make sure that it meets muster legally.
So my other quick question, and this is nothing and anything, but if Andy was on it and then we had voted Aaron on it, but he's already on the council, and we're having a representative to it. That was kind of a bit confusing for me why we were needing two, and I know he was voted in, but it's just.
Yeah. So technically you don't need,
Be glad I'm not.
Okay,
technically you don't need any elected officials on it.
okay,
And so, but the council has the option of appointing one elected official
Okay.
to it. And so you've done that just now
Yep,
with
yep.
Aaron.
understood.
And so Andy was elected by the electorate. So he's not an appointed, and so we just made sure, because we want to make sure we were doing everything right. And the town's attorney says, yeah, the law doesn't speak to an elected official also being elected to the Charter Commission.
Okay. Just clarification, so thank you.
My recommendations, so Gil Susi, obviously, he's been Duloc. So those would be my two recommendations.
I would second Gil Susie.
Yeah, those are mine as well.
Make a motion that Gil Susie be accepted to the Charter Commission.
Any discussion? All in favor? Gil Susi? All are in favor.
She was just going by what her recommendation was.
Jim Clam, lived in the town of Winthrop for 38 years. Raised 3 kids here, love this little community. Also, I have 2 of my kids that still live here that have given me 4 grandchildren. So my past job experiences, I traveled all the time. Never really had a lot of time to get involved in the town government. I retired at the end of the year. So I'd like to get a little more involved in the town and the community. So that's why I'm here. So I'd appreciate you guys just supporting me on this.
Any discussion? Thank you. June 2nd and June 16th.
Is that ahead of the appointment?
16th council meetings. There a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
I'll make a motion to.
Discussion? All in favor? On to item 101, consideration of recommendations from the Appointments Committee. I will turn that over to Councilor White.
So we. Move, we can have you speak, but I think we're just going to move to appoint both George Smith and Timothy Adams for consideration. I would move to consider the recommendations. Committee.
Is there anyone else in the audience that has a public comment or anyone online? Yes.
Jennifer Phillips, public comment about the planning for open space. Where I came from, I don't like to, always compare to being from away, but our city annexed an area that became part of our city. And in doing so, they rewrote the open space plans, and it created a lot of information because a lot of people were concerned about an eminent domain because there was lots of farmland. And at one point, the county where we lived was the fastest being built with new homes and everything in the whole state of Illinois. So the open plan, the open space guidelines was very helpful because it preserved areas and it defined areas, and it even worked out partnerships in areas where they were able to create some paths on two property lines for two different owners, and it would highlight information for people that owned property that was like a wish list item, so that if they were going to sell their property and you had a goal to redevelopment and you needed that one piece, it wasn't, we're going to take it by eminent domain, but, we would like to do something if this became available. And they would look for different grants and other things from other organizations that would help out because the city wasn't going to be paying for the purchase of all the lands. So I think her suggestion and money towards her grant would be very well spent in helping to find things for the town. So, but I also agree we need to take care of the ambulance service.
Thank you.
Not seeing anything online. We'll move on to the town manager's report. Thank you, Jennifer.
So a few items. There was some correspondence last week that Aaron was involved in with the Cobbossee Watershed District. Just an update on the Annabessacook Dam. There was some leakage going on there. They had some new boards milled. They've inserted those, and it looks like that has helped to resolve that issue. Right now, speaking of community action grants, the town of Monmouth got a $50,000 grant during the last cycle, and they're doing an engineering study to see what, if any, improvements ought to be made to that dam. That study is expected to be completed in the fall. And then once we know what the findings of that are, we may be engaged in a conversation with Monmouth about how we can partner on some improvements to that dam. It's interesting that the beach came up earlier in the meeting because last week I received a visit from a citizen who lives near the East Winthrop Beach, and she was concerned about some of the activity down there. I went to our ordinances, and we have a set of beach rules, but they apply only to the Maranacook Lake Beach. It doesn't, there's no mention of it, of the East Winthrop Beach. And I guess that makes sense because when these rules were drafted, we didn't at that time have ownership of the East Winthrop Beach. So I've also corresponded with the town's attorney about this. What I'd like to do is come back with a proposal to you about how we might configure those rules so that it speaks not only to Maranacook Beach, but to the East Winthrop Beach. Our attorney said that just keeping those as rules as opposed to codifying those as an ordinance would be fine, unless we want the option of providing like some sort of penalty, i.e. fines, for anyone who violates those rules. So I think first we'll want to come up with the rules. And then secondly, then we can determine sort of how we want to approach that, whether it would be via ordinance or just having some rules in place.
There is a sign at the East Winthrop Beach, and I believe it almost 100% copies the rules at the Winthrop Beach now. Okay?
But, and you're right, there is a sign there, but it doesn't, I mean, it's not codified in any sort of way. It doesn't appear that there was any council action taken to adopt those rules.
I think the most important thing was a comment we heard earlier about the fueling on the beach. Just about 100% of them.
I think it's a good idea. Okay, so I'll work on that, maybe have something for you at the next meeting.
Anthony, are we talking, you can, when you, and I guess you'll write some rules, but just when you talk about it, do we just talk about any public or be, so we don't have to identify beach or beaches, we just say town beaches, town-owned beaches? Would that just, in case we do down the road, if something else becomes available?
Yeah, I
So,
think that's a good idea too.
so that's just a thought
Okay.
though.
People tend to get creative. To the point where, there's no fueling on the property. Of course, we caught a lot of trouble because people said, well, you're just. We'd say, no, you're a marina customer, you have full use of the boat ramp, go pull your boat if you want, but these are the environmental rules here.
Okay, so I emailed you last week, but just to make sure that you know about this, we're going to end revenue-wise FY '25 somewhere in the neighborhood of like $1 million over what was budgeted, which is great. So we do anticipate we will be under budget when it comes to expenses. Some of those bills from expenses from FY '25 are still rolling in, so it's going to take us a few weeks to determine exactly how much that is. But we're going to be healthily in the black for FY '25 as a whole. And so then that gives us the opportunity to come to you guys, say, we've got this amount of money. And so then we can start having a discussion about how we might want to allocate those and appropriate those to particular capital reserves, and making sure that we are, if not there, we're getting closer and closer to approaching the 20% that's our policy says that we have for the undesignated fund balance. Good news all around there, I think. No, we don't do that until August. Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I sent an email earlier today about this, about our website. So Civic Plus, which is our website provider, is changing platforms, which is necessarily going to mean changes to our website. Civic Plus is offering 5 cookie cutter templates that one of which we could adopt, but we're probably going to lose some of the customization that we have of our current site and maybe some of the functionality as well. And so they did offer us the opportunity to have one of those cookie cutter websites, and 4 years hence, we could pay $10,000 in order to get that customization and functionality. Or we could pay $5,000 up front and have all of that work done now. And Richard Fortin and I had a couple of different meetings with them, and Richard and I are in agreement that we think it's better both from the user experience, not changing the website twice over the course of 4 years, and from an expense standpoint, it's going to be half as expensive, just going ahead and making that leap now. So unless there's like some objection to it, the plan would be to fund that out of one of the capital reserves or out of the undesignated fund balance, and form a small committee of citizens and staff to start working on the redesign of our website. Oh, yeah, it won't be a radical change. In fact, we've looked at some other Civic Plus websites and we have some ideas about how we'd like to go about doing that.
Stuff we situation where
Well, I think something just happened. I think we got dropped.